Those are the stickers that have been handed out around the country by the AA. Huge turnouts against, amongst other things, the tolling issue. We'll touch on various issues this evening, but we want to concentrate on the tolling issue. We're joined by Gary Ronald, who's the spokesperson for the Automobile Association. Also, Mike Schussler from economists.co.za. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Gary, there are a whole load of people who are getting involved in this now. Is there any sort of cohesive body that's managing and negotiating on behalf of consumers?
There are a couple of entities that have been talking to government at various governmental meetings, if you like, forums. It's us, obviously, it's NEDLAC, it's BUSA, the business unit in South Africa, these entities like Savrala, the political parties, and of course the trade unions. So we've all not necessarily sharing the same platform, but we have the same message. And
but shouldn't you have the same platform?
Well, we're on the same platform, but obviously politics being what it is, a lot of folks like to keep their own identity, although they're fighting for the same cause. So it has been a little bit difficult to try and get one person to lead the fight, and I think it's been maybe a little bit better in the sense that we have a slightly diverse cross-section of South African society actually pushing against government, against the toll issue.
Mike, is government going to give in anything here? They already have.
Yeah, well, they have a lot. I mean, we started at around 60 cents a kilometre, and we're down to 30 cents a kilometre for motorists. For trucks, the heavy trucks, we were at 3 Rand a kilometre. We're now at about 1 Rand 49 a kilometre. So I think they've already given, and they've put in 6 billion into it. I think the problem here...
Hang on, we've put in 6 billion.
Yeah, well, government has put in 6 billion. We are government as well. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to decide how we do this. There's about 14 billion Rand that needs to be paid off on the road. And there's approximately about, I would say, in the next 8 years or so, about 7 billion Rand that has to be paid to the operator under the contracts that were signed in one form or another. And we're not quite sure about that amount. But it basically means that we're looking at, for every 30 cents per kilometre that we pay, 20 cents goes towards the road and 10 cents goes towards the collection of that. And I think people are worried about that amount because it looks very inefficient. That's the long and the short of the money matters, if you wish. I think what the bigger issue is as well is that we need to find a way that we can put infrastructure in place in South Africa without increasing the cost of doing business every time. We get a new power station, for example, and our electricity rates go up tremendously. Now, that doesn't normally happen in many other countries. So we're in this quagmire where if we build an airport, the costs go up. If we build a railway line, the costs go up. If we build a harbour, the costs go up. We're going to outprice ourselves out of most markets.
But isn't this exactly what Zwelinzima Vavi has been saying today, is that you pay taxes to get services. The government should be paying for the roads because that's what you're paying taxes for.
Correct.
So all we're doing here is it's becoming a private-public partnership in every facet of our society.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if you look at what Kusata's point of view is, and Vavi was absolutely right. We're saying the user pay principle, in theory, is probably the best way of actually looking at a fair tax to develop anything, whether it's a harbour, whether it's a road, it doesn't really matter. But it has got to the point where it is actually damaging the economy of the country to an extent where people won't actually be able to afford to go to work. They might have to change their job to get closer because they don't have the money in their pockets to pay for the fuel, to buy the car, to get to the job in the first place. So we would actually say, you know what, you've got the fuel levy. The fuel levy is a tax by road users that's supposed to look after the infrastructure of the country. And what better place and what most effective way of actually collecting funds for national infrastructure projects? I mean, if you take the 30 cents a kilometre and versus a 3 cents, put 30 cents onto the fuel price, That roughly equates at 10 kilometers per litre, 3 cents a kilometre. Look at the difference. It talks to the man in the street, absolutely, let alone business. I mean, you're probably more qualified to talk about that.
I think the problem is I don't think we can put everything on the fuel tax.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. And there's no doubt and so on. But the part of the problem in South Africa is that at this moment in time, public servants are getting paid quite well. They get paid about 34% more than the private sector. So in South Africa, the rich people are actually public servants. Believe it or not, that's what's actually happening in the main. You can look at exceptions, but that's what's happening. So what we need to do as well is we need to make sure that the public service is efficient, because otherwise we take money away from that. And then the other fact is we do have a lot of welfare payments. About 11% or so of government expenditure goes on welfare payments. Now, we know that a lot of people are poor, but we also know that that's not, can't be done forever and a day, because you need that money for infrastructure. And in South Africa, we've got the strange case where a government only spends 2.5% of GDP on infrastructure. The private sector's paying 12.5% on infrastructure. Yet we pay for public servants, including then the state-owned enterprises, 12.5% of their money of GDP is their salaries. So we pay them 5 times what the government is spending on infrastructure. And I think it should be much closer. It should be maybe 10% of our government or pay should be, or 10% of GDP should maybe pay, but then we should make 5% from government should be on infrastructure. So we have to get that 2.5% moved over. That's the other thing. So it's not just a case of increasing taxes. I think we must look at the broader issue here, because already I think people feel that they're overtaxed. This is probably, in a sense, the biggest tax revolt that we've ever had in South Africa. And it's joined by people from the AA and AfriForum, the Road Freight Association, and everybody's coming on board here. And even the Young Communist League, is saying we don't want this, we don't, Kusatu and so on. So it's right through the political spectrum. It's a very difficult thing to gauge, but I think really it is the first big tax revolt that we're seeing in South Africa. That is maybe the story that's not being reported on.
You'd agree with that, Gary?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have a look at the money that is to go back to the fuel levy, about 30 billion, roughly, give or take. If we spend that money on infrastructure and road maintenance, etc., yes, you can see that there's quite a bit of work being done on our roads throughout the country. The problem is the efficiency. You get the contractor comes out to fix the pothole, goes back, the pothole reappears, comes back again. He does this 5 times before it's actually sorted. But in the meantime, he's paid every time he goes out. So the 30 billion pool, we as the consumer and the actual contributor to that tax, we're only getting, 20% of the value of that money. So the oversight needs to be way much better. And if we get that, well, then you can take the money from the fuel levy and say, well, we can pay 1.5 billion a year to the Gauteng improvement plan and sort it in 8 or 9 years' time, and deal with the debt and not have to have a toll where money is actually collected at very, very expensively.
Because this could easily become a very political discussion, which I don't mind at all. But let's just get back to the actual tolling issue. Has anyone done the maths on what the other costs are involved in this?
Well, we did a study. I did it in conjunction with DNA Economics and my firm. And I just want to say this. Okay, we did it when the tolls were still a lot higher. It does have an impact on inflation, about 0.4% here in Gauteng. But I think we must look at it like this. The best way for me to describe it would have equaled a 2% personal tax hike for the people of Gauteng. It would be similar. Or a 1% tax hike for the whole citizens of South Africa, just in simple layman's terms. Okay. That's what we're talking about. We've now halved that. So for the people of Gauteng, it's a 1% tax hike, and it's a 0.5% tax hike for the citizens of South Africa. That's what this boils down to. So it's a very big project. It was very expensive, and we have to look at it in broad terms that we needed it. Okay, what we are however, saying is that we must find another way to finance this, because this user pays principle is all fine, but in South Africa it means some of the users pay some of the time. Let me tell you what I mean. You drive on some roads and you don't pay for them, but other roads you pay for. Or some types of transport, with other words, a taxi doesn't pay, but a car pays. Then we get to electricity, where we also know there's low payment of electricity in certain townships. And it's not about politics. It's just, if you've got a users pays principle, you must stick to it right through. You cannot have a school where people don't pay fees and another school where people pay fees. If they volunteer to pay fees, that's a different story. But in South Africa, we've got a very mingled mash at the moment, and we need to sort that out very, very quickly. Otherwise, we're going to sit with the problem, and it is going to become a political problem. Not in the voting politics only. It's going to be a street political problem. It's going to become a tax problem, because let me tell you, the other thing is, if people pay these tolls like they pay traffic fines at the moment, less than 20% of the people 15%. Are going to pay, and then this whole thing, Sanral, is going to fold.
Well, that's one of the points I was wanting to get to. Gary, is I have got a properly registered motor vehicle.
Right.
So let's say I go through a toll and I get my fee sent to me. They can follow up on that and claim that money back. Somebody who has got an illegally registered car, who falls, it's all, I don't know how to put it. I think what I'm trying to say is, once you're in the net,
You're in.
you're in.
Yeah.
If you're not in the net, you're never going to have to pay a cent for anything, whether it's electricity, tax, tolls, whatever. And it just seems that the net of taxpayers is just being taxed more and more and more, and it's reaching a tipping point now.
I think it's got to that point already. I mean, I think for me, the toll issue is the sharp end of the wedge that's going to change quite a lot of hopefully, the social way that we actually do business, that government actually looks at implementing plans where there's a cost. I think there's a lot of folks in Parliament, and to call it what it is, I believe that they've actually managed to paint themselves in a corner. Now the paint is starting to dry, they're actually able to walk over it. And I think that the ministers, by his own admission, to say, well, look, we've made a mistake, but hell, we'll just have to get over it. That already tells me, but hang on, there's still more to come on this story. I'm convinced that we will see further changes to this toll issue. I think that's at the before the end of April probably. Might have further concessions. I hope so.
We'll come back to this discussion in just a moment. We're talking about the toll issue. It's the big story of the day today. Our guests in the studio will be back with you in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.